If you're not familiar with the Breakfast Club, which I hope you all are, it's a prerequisite in our house if my girls, when they were in high school, brought boyfriends home. If they didn't know my 80s movies, they were out of there. Okay, so the Breakfast Club is about 5 high school students who all spend a Saturday together in detention. And on the surface, they have nothing in common, right? It's a brain, an athlete, a basket case, a princess, and a criminal. And they all come from different backgrounds. They roll with different cliques in high school. And so there's no reason why they should be friends. But something that happens in the movie is they're all sitting on the floor in the library, and they're sharing their experience of why they got into detention. And it's a personal story. And as they each take their turns talking about why they were there, a connection forms. A bond begins to form. And they end up being friends. And again, these are students who never would have just formed friendships within that high school. But because they were telling their stories, they were connecting. When we tell our story makes us unique and relatable. And it forms a bridge. There's a bridge that builds a gap between humans. It creates this space for kindness and empathy, compassion, impact, and inspiration. And other things in our life do the same thing, like music and movies. But if you think about it, what is music? Music is lyrics. Lyrics are stories. They're stories of love found, love lost, trucks, dogs, you name it, right? But we find ourselves inside of those stories, inside of the lyrics and inside of the music, and same with movies. We connect to the characters, to their backstory. So our lives are filled with storytelling, and that's how we create connections socially. I brought up the Breakfast Club, and so many of you were like, yeah, I love that movie. I could see everyone nodding, right? There's a connection that forms. So I want you to take for a moment and think about something that changed your life. Whether it was finding your first love, getting married, having your first baby, maybe experiencing a divorce, or even an unimaginable trauma or illness. How did that transform your life? How did that help you evolve as a human being? When you share those stories, you have the power to impact so many people around you. Your transformation can make a difference in someone else's life when you share it and when you talk about those things. Now, I can tell you who I am, or I can show you who I am. So, for example, I could walk up today and say, hi, I'm Wendy Babcock. I'm an international and TEDx speaker, author, and the paid stage speaker coach. What does that tell you about me? Honestly, not a whole lot. Not really a whole lot. And it's not very relatable unless you're a speaker or you are an aspiring speaker. Then maybe you care, maybe you don't. But it doesn't tell you who I am as a person. But if I show you through storytelling, that will make a difference. For example, yesterday we had a crazy thing happen in our household. Yesterday, our cat decided to bring in a live chipmunk into the house. Chaos ensued. It was wild. So not only do we have cats, we have 2 very large dogs who also wanted to play with Mr. Chipmunk. So while this poor thing was running from the kitchen to our living room, trying to find a place to hide, my dogs are trying to pounce it, the cat's catching it, letting it go again, and the poor thing lost a little bit of its tail. I'm now on the couch screeching, holding my blanket, because I am not good in crisis. My husband knows this, so he took over. So there he is with his work gloves on. He's got a broom and a dustpan. He's ready to try and scoot this thing out of the house. Fortunately, Mr. Chipmunk did live. Okay. Now, that story on the surface doesn't seem to tell you a lot, right? You just think, okay, it's a funny little quip about what happened in her day. But if you think about it, it tells you we love animals. We don't want my cat to kill a chipmunk or the dogs to get chipmunks. It tells you that we have animals in our house. It tells you that I'm not good in crisis. And that my husband knows that, and he will rescue me every single time, right? So I can tell you and give you those titles and try and sound impressive or important. But more than likely, when you leave here today, you will remember the chipmunk story over my title. Storytelling is 22 times more memorable than facts and figures alone. And as a motivational speaker, I can tell you that is 100% true. When I get off of a stage from a speaking opportunity, I never have someone come up to me and say, oh, I love those figures that you were talking about. No, they don't throw those numbers back at me. They talk about the stories that they connected with and related with. Think about a time when maybe you wanted to be healthier, right? You want to either lose weight, start a diet, start a new nutrition plan, new workout. What do? Right? Maybe you buy a book or a program, you read it. And if you just did that alone, you might be successful, right? But what do we tend to do? Go to YouTube, Pinterest, Instagram. What are we looking for? Stories of transformation, those before and after stories. Because that's what motivates us. That's what keeps us going, are the stories that we connect to. We could do it on our own without it, but most of us move on motivation. And stories give us that motivation. It's pretty incredible. So yeah, you could get on stage and become a paid motivational speaker or speak to market your business, but most people are terrified of getting up on a stage and speaking. However, if you are a business owner or an entrepreneur, you can use storytelling to help you in your business as well. For example, let's say you're networking or you are trying to acquire new clients. Utilize storytelling. People can probably get what you have, whatever you're selling, from somebody else. They're buying because it's you. Share a story about how you started your business. What were the challenges, the pitfalls, some of the celebrations? Maybe there's a funny story about a chipmunk getting into your house the day of maybe your first time getting a new client. Whatever it is, right? That's what people connect to. Or you can use it and talk about client testimonials. Because if your clients are coming to you, right, they want to be motivated that you can help them. By sharing somebody else's story, those testimonials, that's going to motivate them and help them see themselves inside of those testimonials so that they want to hire you. You could use it in social media marketing and content creation as well. A lot of times, I'm telling you, we get too businessy when we're promoting our things, right? And again, people roll their eyes. They don't want to see statistics and numbers. Maybe they do if you're running a bank, right? They want to know the numbers are good. But on what we really want to do is we want to relate to the person that we're hiring. So tell your funny stories. Talk about if you have grandkids, not all over your page like I do maybe, but sharing those bits of yourself and your personal stories is what's going to attract people to you. So you could get on stage and become a speaker, right? You could do this because you're going to reach a lot of people, right? Standing and talking to one person's one thing, but when you stand on a stage and you have a sea of people that you can impact and elicit change through, it's an amazing feeling. So in my women's event that I host, last year I shared my personal stories from dealing with childhood trauma, childhood abuse, and learning to become quiet. Because being silent and quiet is what kept me safe. And that carried forward into my first marriage where I experienced domestic abuse. And again, silence is what kept me safe. Until I left that. I did therapy, right? I discovered who I was again, and I started getting on stages and telling my story. And after I share those deeply personal stories of myself, I can't tell you how many women come up to me and say, oh my gosh, you could have been telling my story up there. Or I know someone who's going through that right now. I wish she could have heard you speak. It's an incredible thing to create change from the things that you've been through just by sharing them. So I want to challenge you all, right, to reflect on your own life and the stories that have shaped you and who you've become. Our world can feel very divided, and it can seem very heavy, right? But if we could all sit on the floor in a library somewhere and tell our stories and experiences and share those things, we would see that we have a lot more in common than we even realize. And we can bridge that gap between each one of us. People see us the way they want to see us. In the simplest terms, in the most convenient definitions, I have found that we all are a brain and an athlete and a basket case, a princess and a criminal. So if I was going to ask you today to write an essay of no less than 1,000 words describing to me who you think you are, what would you say? What stories would you tell? And will you share it with the world? Thank you.